Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 4th, 2014 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my privilege to call tonight's meeting to order. There are copies of tonight's agenda on either side of the room. If you haven't already had a chance to do so, please pick up a copy and you can follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment throughout the course of the evening, both with respect to items that are on our agenda tonight, but also a segment under item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. So if there are any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not appearing on our agenda tonight, item 4 would be the time to come up, but I will remind you of that when we get to it. So it is our proud custom to begin, especially on Election Day, to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight we have some very special guests who are here tonight and who are going to help us lead the pledge, because Commissioner Olson told me that he was going to be too nervous to say the pledge without a little help tonight. So I really appreciate all of you girls being here tonight to help out. So we have from Girl Scout Troop 51096 from both Leicester and Kingsley schools here tonight who are going to help us lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Ladies, would you please come up? And everyone else here tonight would please rise. Come on down, spread out. Remember, there's only 200 or 300 million people at home watching you on TV. No worries. Whenever you're ready, we'll turn around. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nice job. Now you have to turn around for a second and freeze, because I'm sure there's going to be a photo in this somewhere. We promised them Facebook publicity, so we have to deliver on this. Nicely done. Thank you very much, ladies. All right. And with that, I'd like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. It brings us to item 3, which pertains to review and approval of minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight. Those are the minutes from our regular council meeting of October 21st, 2014. Do any members of the village council have any questions, comments, changes, or corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Terrific. Those minutes are approved. And just like that, we are at item 4 on our agenda tonight, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. So if there are any members of our audience here tonight who have any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on tonight's agenda, the protocol is to come down to the podium, introduce yourself to us, and we would love to hear from you. And I don't know if I can handle any more of those tough questions in the Girl Scouts, so you guys are excluded. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Joe Niewiadomski. My wife Joy and I live at 959 Oxford Street. For the past 4.5 years, we've been proud to call Downers Grove our home. Throughout this time, we have spent significant time and energy to improve our home while at the same time improving the community and the homes surrounding us. Our home is located at the corner lot of Oxford Street and Main Street. Last month, we filed a request for permit to install a fence in the rear yard of our lot. The immediate purpose of the fence is to provide security for our dogs while also shielding them from the frequent sidewalk traffic that is present along Main Street. Looking to the future, the fence will also provide safety and security as we expand our family. After submitting the permit, we received notification from the Community Development Director's office that our permit was being denied as submitted. When we inquired as to why the permit was denied, Mr. Stan Popovich explained that his interpretation of the zoning ordinance was that a 6-foot fence was not permitted in the street yard of a corner lot. While we attempted to explain that the fence was only to be located in the rear yard per the zoning ordinance definitions, Mr. Popovich maintained his stance. While we are disappointed with his decision, we're forced to accept it. Mr. Popovich maintains that his interpretation of the Downers Grove zoning ordinance would only allow a 4-foot open fence at our proposed layout. This is not a feasible option for our family due to the constant foot traffic along Main Street. Our concern with an open fence design is that our rear yard would be visible from the sidewalks, allowing foot traffic, including dogs, sight to the rear yard. We're concerned this will encourage other dogs to engage our dogs and create a noise nuisance for our neighbors. Mr. Popovich's approved location for our requested fence design would essentially cut half of our yard in half with a 6-foot fence. This scenario only allows half of our rear yard to be enclosed. We wanted to bring this awareness to issues. We plan to apply for a variance so we can construct the fence as proposed and continue to be a good member of the community, keeping our dogs from causing a nuisance to our neighbors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming tonight, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for taking advantage of the process that exists under the village code for pursuing some relief from your initial request. Other questions or comments from members of the audience of general interest in matters that are not appearing on tonight's agenda? All right, very well then, we'll move on to item 5, council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to share with the audience and the rest of the council items of interest to the community or various goings-on. I'll start with Commissioner Jose tonight.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rankin.
No report, thank you.
Commissioner Durkin.
Absolutely no report. Thank you.
Absolutely no report. Commissioner Neustadt, you can do better than that.
I do have a report. I saw some on the way in tonight. We have a big giant holiday tree that we're going to be putting up soon, and since the Girl Scouts are here tonight, perhaps you would like to know that we're looking for folks to help us put decorations on that holiday tree. So, if you visit our website at downers.us, you'll find some information about the homemade ornaments that could be made to be put on our community's holiday tree. It's a great way to show your civic pride. After you've been here at Village Hall tonight, you can say you made some ornaments and then go check them out at the tree lighting ceremony as we do that in late November. So check that out on our website, and there's some guidelines for what kind of materials and how they should be put together. But it's pretty cool to be creative about those.
We did it last year.
You did last year. Well, we'd love to have you do it again. Thanks. That's all I had tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Olson.
No report.
Commissioner Barnett.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Very quickly, I just want to remind everyone and congratulate our fire department and all of village staff for the village having recently received notification that the Downers Grove Fire Department now ranks in the top 1.5% of departments nationwide for fire protection effectiveness. The ratings are issued by the Insurance Service Office, ISO, and are used to set residential and business insurance premium rates. Property owners in the communities with good ISO ratings, like Downers Grove, benefit from lower insurance rates. So not only is that terrific for public safety, but it also has an economic benefit. So I think that's something that we should all be very pleased with, and congratulatory to our fine fire department for continuing to maintain that standard of excellence. And now, of course, the Girl Scouts know how many fire stations there are in Downers Grove and how many are operating. They know about the secret one, so you can ask them about that later. That's all I have for my report. That brings us to item 6, which is reserved for public hearings, and we do have a public hearing tonight with respect to the proposed fiscal year budget for 2015. I will begin by reading the procedures that we will follow with respect to this public hearing. This public hearing will please come to order. This public hearing has been called by the Village Council to consider the proposed village budget for fiscal year 2015. Notice of this hearing was published in the Downers Grove Suburban Life newspaper, and a certificate of publication is made part of these proceedings. I would like to summarize the procedures which we will follow for tonight's public hearing. First, our village manager, David Fieldman, will provide an overview of the proposed budget for fiscal year 2015. Next, there will be an opportunity for members of the Village Council to ask questions or make comments with respect to the proposed budget. Next, there will be an opportunity for members of the public to make statements or comments, or to submit written statements or comments for the record on that subject. Thereafter, I will again ask if any member of the Village Council wishes to make any statement or ask any question regarding the proposed budget. And finally, I will ask for a motion to adjourn at the end of that process. Please note that at this hearing, witnesses will not be sworn, and a verbatim written transcript of the statements or testimony given at the hearing will not be prepared. However, a recording of the procedures will be made on village equipment and retained until minutes of the hearing have been prepared and approved by the Village Council. So with that introduction, we will go back to item 1 and ask our village manager, David Fieldman, to please provide an overview of the proposed fiscal year 2015 budget, which I would point out has been the topic of multiple prior meetings, but we are required by law to hold a public hearing on that topic, even though we have had multiple public meetings already. with respect to the proposed fiscal year 2015 budget. Mr. Fieldman.
Well, with all that buildup, we actually don't have any further presentation as it's been presented at 4 or 5 public meetings to date, and we're trying to get up on the screen the number of times it's been discussed, going back to early October. The budget message remains the same. It's been presented several times, and we're here to answer any questions. Oh, and yes, so you can see in the blue box on the screen here that this is, I think, the 5th or 6th public meeting that it's been discussed, and we do have a report online, and we're happy to answer questions.
Terrific. Thank you very much for that reintroduction. So I will then ask if any members of the village council have any questions or comments with respect to the proposed budget at this time. And again, this is something that the members of the council have discussed on multiple prior occasions, including a half-day meeting on a Saturday where we went through it in great detail and entertained questions and comments from members of the audience who participated then. So don't take that silence as anything more than this is the next meeting in a series of public meetings on the topic. With that, I will then ask if there are any comments or statements from any members of the audience with respect to the proposed fiscal year 2015 budget. And we do have some. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. I'm Gordon Goodman. I live at 5834 Meadow. And I wanted to follow up on a question that I raised at a previous meeting about the tree program and the distribution of resources between the capital budget and the new component there related to the removal of ash tree and replacement, and the traditional tree trimming, pruning, replacement of parkway trees that we've had in the past. And as I recall, the manager said he would provide background detail on that, but I haven't found it yet.
If you take a look, Dr. Goodman, at the staff report that is connected to the public hearing, we have a little box there that has the updated information. And the answer is there's $219,000 in the general fund budget in the Public Works Forestry Program that would allow us to plant 400 trees and remove about 280 trees. And this is above and beyond the funding for the ash trees. So it is detailed out here in the report, and we're happy to answer any further questions that anybody may
So
have.
this is the box called Update and Recommendations.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then the other question I had was, I got the impression at the public hearing we had yesterday at the Plan Commission that the village may not be well served by not having a director of community development. And I wondered what the status of the position of Director of Community Development is.
I will defer the answer to that one to our village manager, who is directly responsible.
We have not filled the position of Director of Community Development. We're running with a planning manager and a building division manager. However, for the code dictated responsibilities, I have either assigned myself for that role or assigned one of those two employees to that role. So all codified references have been met, and we will continue to fulfill the role of Community Development Director.
My impression is that the role of Community Development Director was normally filled by someone of great maturity, or substantial maturity anyway. And I know the village manager has that capability, having served as Director of Community Development as well as manager in other roles, but I don't think that he has the ability with his other responsibilities to exercise that responsibility in the village at present. So I'm raising the issue that I think the village really needs a director of community development, and I hope that the board will try to evaluate that suggestion and consider whether this is an arrangement which properly serves the interests of the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman. And obviously, the village has, attempted over the course of many years to address different personnel issues in different ways, always trying to make sure that we maximize the delivery of quality services with the need to deal with finite resources and understanding the financial burdens upon the community. So upmost in our minds at all point in time is making sure that the village is properly served. But we do obviously will pursue opportunities to see if we can do so in an enhanced efficiency or in a more economical way. But all those exercises are always the subject of evaluation. I know that over the years there have been different changes in the org chart which are designed to do the same thing. It is something that we try and we'll continue to evaluate and see what best serves the community. Thank you for your comments. Other questions or comments or statements from members of the audience with respect to the proposed fiscal 2015 budget for the village? Hearing none, I will ask for any final questions or comments from members of the village council with respect to that topic. Seeing none, I will declare this public hearing adjourned. And there will be some final opportunities to address the budget as we move forward, as it was indicated on the timetable that was shown before. That then brings us to item 7 on tonight's agenda, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to any items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the village council? May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 8, our active agenda. We have one item on our active agenda tonight. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance authorizing a special use to permit a funeral services business at 1628 Ogden Avenue?
So moved. Second.
Are there any questions or comments on that item from any members of the audience? Seeing none, any questions or comments from members of the village council? Have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously. Brings us to item 9, our first reading or workshop agenda. There are 4 items under item 9. Each of these items are for presentation and discussion tonight. No action will be taken at this time, but action may be taken in the future. As is customary, village staff will present each of the items to the council for discussion, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and comments both from members of the council as well as from members of the audience. Mr. Fieldman.
The first item is an ordinance that would exempt certain properties from paying stormwater utility fees. On October 7th, the village council directed staff to prepare this ordinance that would exempt tax-exempt properties from paying a stormwater utility fee. We did prepare extensive background information that's been discussed on several occasions by the council, and we're happy to answer any questions the council may have on this item.
Thank you. I'll start with asking if there's any questions or comments from members of the audience. Good evening.
Evening, Council. My name is Jeff Heller, 1025 Claremont. I'm a village resident, Downers Grove. Also on the Finance Committee of St. Andrew's Parish. It's Episcopal Church here at Franklin and Saratoga. I've commented here before about this issue, but recently we've been doing our budgetary process, and it's become pretty apparent that churches are under pressure in many ways. This is just one of them. Councilman Newstead came and attended a meeting of some of church representatives here in the village, listened to some of the things that we brought up at that time. We appreciated his presence. But I thought, just as one example, I would bring up a recently received educational piece that probably most of the people in the county received from DuPage PADS. And in there, they note that over the course of the past year, they've served over 145,000 meals, an average of almost 400 a day. In those numbers, they also recognize that they partnered with 4,000 volunteers and 160 congregations in DuPage County. Those congregations are well represented here in the village. Not only do we provide the manpower, but we prepare the meals. We also provide all of the food. And so it's just one of the extensions of what the churches do on a regular basis. That is our mission. And being in a position where we're being feed or taxed for the first time is drawing away from the real mission and the reason why people ascribe to Christianity or whatever their religion is. So it's in that spirit that we are asking for this exemption, and I just thought I'd bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for sharing that. Other questions or comments from members of the audience?
Yes, again.
Hello again.
I'm Gordon Goodman, 5834 Midoff. And reading over the proposal to exempt all properties that are exempt from paying property tax from the stormwater utility, it occurred to me that maybe we just better scrap the stormwater utility so that the taxpayers who pay this expense can begin deducting that from their federal taxes again. And I don't see the benefits of excluding large drainage areas from the stormwater utility. It completely defeats the logic of the original reasons for having a stormwater utility. It's my suggestion that rather than this way of providing support for charities in our community that we regard as worthwhile, the council should look again, as it was suggested when you did away with the Community Grants Commission, at procedures by which you can evaluate and use public funds to support these charities' activities. This under-the-table support of the charity activities is not appropriate. It is not a proper way to use the stormwater utility to provide a hole in the collection mechanism so that you can support these worthwhile public charities. Do it openly and with discussion, rather than by exempting them from their logical responsibilities to pay for the drainage that we have to provide utilities to support that comes off of their land. So I think this is a completely illogical and wrong way to approach the support of these very worthwhile institutions in our community. I think you've been browbeaten by the people coming in and saying, this is the way we want you to do it. I think you should step back and think about just how do you want to support the activities of these worthwhile institutions. In my judgment, using or subverting the logic of the stormwater utility in order to accomplish that goal is wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Bill Roble, 7800 Queens Court, Downers Grove. I read the script on the proposed ordinance exempting non-for-profits from the stormwater utility fee, and it looked like over the course of rolling this out to be something like $800,000, which would create a large shortfall in the well-crafted projections of solving the stormwater problem here in Downers Grove. And I live on the south end of town. It's a community called Nottingham. There's approximately 275 homes in Nottingham. And I reflected on myself. We have a watershed which happens to go into Sawmill Creek, doesn't go into the watershed here in Downers Grove. But as a community, I don't think 275 homes would want to opt out of the stormwater utility, although we could probably make a case. Our water doesn't go into the flooding problems in Downers Grove. It goes to Sawmill Creek and into Des Plaines River, where everything else goes into St. Joseph Creek and into the DuPage River. So I think the stormwater utility, as it was conceived and engineering is done, it has a time frame and a dollar financing situation. I have to agree with Gordon Goodman that it's practical to find another way to subsidize the churches other than to take the fee away from them. They do contribute a huge amount of water to the stormwater runoff with the parking lots and their roof surfaces and so forth. I'm not against churches. I don't go to church in Downers Grove. I go to church in Darien. I go to church in Lamont. So I'm sort of neutral. I have a neutral watershed. I have neutral religious commitments. So, but I live in Downers Grove, so I'm prepared to take my responsibility as a Downers Grove resident, as a Downers Grove taxpayer, and as the utility fee. I got my bill from the Downers Grove Water Department today. There's $17.88 for stormwater, and I realize I don't contribute anything to that, to the central part of the village. So I think there's another way to help the churches other than to upset the plan that was well developed. And I hope you, and I think I sent you a little email today to the situation. This should be workshopped with the dollars and cents involved, which would upset the plan that's in place. We're going to have to do a whole new engineering plan and put the people who are underwater right now, put them on hold, because we're taking care of the necessities of the needs for the tax exempt. That's only the churches. And then as you in the discussion in the ordinance proposal, they raised the question, should it be a tax or a fee? Who are all the nonprofits? Strictly religious, or are they other entities that are nonprofits? You open Pandora's box all over again. That's the only comment I have to make. But it should be, again, emphasized to the community that this is going to upset the stormwater plan as it exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roble. Appreciate your comments. Before anyone speaks twice, does anyone else who would like to speak for the first time on this topic, please? Thank you for your patience. Good evening.
Well, good evening to you all. I'm Father Bill Cullen from St. Mary of Goston. I couldn't help but come and speak when I hear suggestions that the city, the government of Downers Grove wants to give money to the religious organizations so that we could do all the things that we are doing right now and pay the stormwater tax. I would suggest that's in dreamland. The courts and other places have said that that money is given to the tax on people in the Downers Grove and for the benefit of Downers Grove. And for this body, this esteemed body, to decide they're going to give so much money to the Catholic Church, so much money to the Lutheran Church, so much money to the Church of Christ, the Episcopal. We have 17 congregations that have been working together with this problem of the stormwater tax on the churches. It is just not, when someone said practical, or whatever word you use, it's not practical to think that the government, a government, can start to give money to churches to do charity. That's what the churches, the people of the churches do. What we have requested is that we would remove the churches, the established churches, from this tax. And so that we can continue to provide some of the services that you heard, Every Friday night, every night of the week, we have the people of the homeless people. Would the city then take over the expenses of running a homeless shelter every single night of the week in the various churches? And I think that would leave the village of Downers Grove open to suit by people who said it is using taxpayers' fund for religious purposes. And so any idea that that's how it could be settled is as I said, is in dreamland. It won't work. The best thing to do is to listen to the voice of the people, of the churches, and to exempt the religious bodies. I don't know of the other non-profit groups. I don't know if they have the same issues that we do. But I, on behalf of all of us, thank you as a council for looking at this again. It doesn't show a sign that you're indecisive. It just shows that you are willing to listen and, as facts are presented, to make decisions. And I congratulate and thank you for that.
Thank you, Father.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here. Anyone else who hasn't already spoken who would like to speak? Please, sir.
I'd only like to take the opportunity to point out to my neighbors that most of the members or parishioners of the churches here in Downers Grove are also residents here. And so they are paying a form of stormwater tax. I don't think any one of us would object if we bear the burden of our churches on our own home. It's just the idea that the churches are being taxed in this way for the first time, and it's going to open a door that hasn't been opened ever. So, the precedent that's being set here can have some real ramifications for us going forward. And that is part of the point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this topic from members of the audience? Good evening.
Hi, Marge Earl, 4720 Florence Avenue. I was just sitting there thinking, and they keep calling this a stormwater tax or it's a utility fee, but churches seem to think, and these not-for-profits seem to think that they're exempt from all taxes. And there's taxes on gas when they fill up the car. They're rolled into the price. There's taxes on your electric bill. There's taxes on your gas service. There's taxes on everything. Their Comcast service. There's taxes on everything. So why they think if this is a tax that they should be exempted from one more tax, I'm not quite sure. So maybe somebody could explain the difference to them and to me. Also, I kind of take a little bit of offense at having to exempt communities that are supposed to be reaching out and embracing their neighbors. That's part of their callings, supposedly, that caring for your neighbors is part of what you do as a church. At least it was in the churches I went to, and all this stormwater utility fee does is help our neighbors. We're not using it anyplace else. We're just using it here to try to help our neighbors to stop the flooding. The people across the street from you, the people across the street from me, the people across the street from the churches. And so, to say that they're above having to help their neighbors, yes, I understand that there are other missions that they have, but this is a burden everyone in this town carries. And I don't know why they feel that they're above it, because that's what they're making it sound like. So a little bit of offense, I suppose, at that, because even though I don't like this stormwater utility fee, it's here and I'm willing to pay it, because whether it's on the tax or as a utility fee, it's going to the right cause. It's trying to keep everybody in this town high and dry so that we don't have these repeated catastrophes that maybe the churches are bailing people out of in the long run. So maybe they should look at that as a way of helping a little bit at a time instead of having to, shell out big when one of their parishioners or several of their parishioners have a terrible flood event and need some assistance from the church. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the audience on this item? And thank you to everyone for coming down on election night. I'm sure you'd rather be home watching results. I appreciate your input. I'll then open it up for questions or comments from members of the Village Council. Commissioner Newstead.
Thank you, Mayor. We've talked about this item many times as the manager showed us, but we also have some more information once again here, which is always great to get another level and another investigation, if you will, of the issue. Our job is to set policy and set plans forward for the future. We started that conversation with the stormwater utility years ago. We started the utility and had everyone pay. In that time, and I've learned, I've had a lot of experience with not only my own payment of the stormwater utility, but the users as well. I've had now 2 meetings, one a long time ago at Church on Curtis, and then over at St. Mary's here a couple weeks ago. And each time I've met with the houses of worship, they have been together, polite and respectful with their questioning and their investigation into the stormwater utility as well. There's no secret that my opinion has changed because of the experience and the learning that I've done over the last year. But I do feel at this point it's the right thing to do based on many reasons to exempt all property tax exempt parcels from the stormwater utility. We are able to still provide excellent stormwater coverage to our community. We have done so much with stormwater since 2006 and 7 and 8 when we first had the stormwater infrastructure improvement plan. People don't flood anymore. Big rain events, we still have those in town. We're always going to have those in town. But what we're trying to do up here is make those, mitigate the actions and the responses of those storms. It's extremely important to me that we do continue down and have a plan for our stormwater infrastructure in our village. And I think we can still manage and have revenues that will take care of many of the projects and plans that we have in place going forward. So, I appreciate the extra information that staff provided us. There's a lot of information here. But for me, I think it's time to make that exemption for all property tax exempt parcels. And the last thing I'll say is that every year, we're going to have a conversation about the stormwater utility, the rate, the ERU, how the plan worked, what are we going to do, how do we prioritize projects, how do we prioritize the utility. Every year, a village council will have those conversations, and there's always opportunity to have a conversation about how the plan is working. That's what we're doing right now. So I look forward to continuing to have those conversations, and I think that at this moment in time, it's the right thing to do to exempt these parcels, and look forward to seeing the property tax exempt parcels be exempted, as well as the stormwater utility continue in its, in its success and how we're managing the infrastructure in our community.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Rankin?
We have, heard over and over from the churches in the community how the stormwater utility has affected them and their ability to help the community in need. We've heard their pleas. I previously proposed that we provide a reduced stormwater rate for those groups. I didn't get support for that. But I just, as Commissioner Newstead said, I just think it's the right thing to do. Maybe this was a mistake from the beginning. Maybe we should have kept the nonprofit groups out of this from the beginning. We wouldn't necessarily be having this discussion right now. The fees are only going to increase, and this impact is only going to increase the burden on the churches and what they can do in our communities. I think all nonprofits have been affected by this. Maybe we've heard more from the churches, but I'm assuming that all the nonprofits in town have been able to do less because of this fee. So I will support this moving forward and keeping the stormwater utility in the same format that it is right now. Thank you.
After the change?
Right.
Okay.
Right, but not getting into the...
Just understood what you said. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I hadn't planned on
going down this particular road, but I think it's interesting that the suggestion's been made that direct aid to a religious institution that happens to be doing charitable work would raise different objections than exempting those religious institutions from a fee that everybody pays. I think that's kind of a funny suggestion to make, especially in light of the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives that President Bush started and the effort to reach out to and put money into good programs in communities all across the country, regardless of the fact that they are obviously religiously affiliated. But to get back to what I planned on saying, for me, it's the stormwater utility fee is a matter of fairness. Everybody in the village has to pay it based on how much impervious space they have. Not-for-profits, like all residents and businesses in the village, pay a fee to the village for the water that comes out of the tap. They pay a fee to the sanitary district for water that goes down your sink or your bathtub or your toilet. The stormwater utility is in the same manner paying for the stormwater that runs off of your property and ends up in the storm sewers or in extreme rain events in your neighbors' basements or first floors, what have you. Yet we don't hear not-for-profits clamoring to be exempted from the sanitary district's fees or the village's water fees. And we've heard folks from this dais decry the idea that the city of Chicago would actually exempt houses of worship from paying for water because it would mean a larger increase in the price that we pay out here in the suburbs. And yet we're going to seriously look at and quite possibly take the step of pushing more of the burden onto our residents and businesses here in Downers Grove by putting in this exemption. And make no mistake about it, it is pushing the burden because either we are having to increase the fee to make up the difference in the revenue even more than is already planned, or we are pushing projects down the road. And I think the staff report does a very good job of laying that out. Either we're cutting back on maintenance, and the staff proposed amendment to the plan would reduce maintenance by $160,000 starting in 2016, which they approximate to be equivalent to 40,000 lineal feet in televising and storm sewer cleaning, reducing capital spending, delaying or reducing capital projects, delaying bond issuances, reducing the amount of those bond issuances. And we can quibble about whether the plan is going to be accurate 10 years out. But the bottom line is we have to act with the best information that we have now. And that's what the professionals are telling us, the engineers are telling us, and what our staff that has won awards for budgeting is telling us those things will cost. And to not take action based on the idea that there might be changes down the road, I think is the wrong way to go. We need to act with the best information we have now, and that is that we've got major stormwater problems and they need to be solved. And whether you want to talk about delaying projects or reducing maintenance or reducing bond issuances, the bottom line is we're going to get less done if we've got less money. You can do fewer projects if you don't have as much money. So regardless of the way the council goes, my hope is that one way or the other, we will find a way to make sure that we don't reduce our commitment to solving the stormwater problems here in Downers Grove. It is, in my experience, the universal issue. You hear about it from folks regardless of the neighborhood they live in, from business owners who have been dramatically affected. And the council over the last 7 or 8 years has done a very good job in starting to address those stormwater problems. But the fact remains that we have a lot more to do. And I hope that we're not taking a step back from that by putting this hole in our budget. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Barnett.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not going to repeat everything I've said on this subject numerous times, just to suggest that my position on this has not changed, and I'm more than ready to go ahead and make this move, so I'll happily be supporting this next week. And I guess I would just kind of underline the idea that there's a lot of hairs that could be split on this. And for me, a lot of it goes back to the fundamental premise about our relationship with our not-for-profit community. And so on that basis, not only, but certainly on that basis primarily, I'd like to continue forward, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Commissioner
If you're doing
Durkin?
a straw poll, yeah, I will be supporting the removal of all the nonprofits within the utility. I think by removing them all and not doing what was discussed earlier about just removing a segment like the places of worship, I think by doing it all is the most transparent way to do it. And this way we're not, our future councils or staff or whoever is not deciding who's going to be exempt one year over another. So I will be supporting the exemption for all nonprofits.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Any comment, Commissioner Olson? Just checking.
No, nothing for me.
All right, thank you. Just a few comments. I continue to be a little troubled with how we've made policy regarding the stormwater utility, whether it was the amount of increase every year or whether it's we're going to exclude certain people. Because let's not kid ourselves. We're making choices about who's in and who's out. Call it what you want, but it's a little dicey policy making in my opinion. Let's go back to the reasons for the stormwater utility. We've been talking about this since before it was adopted. It was put into place in January of 2013. It was voted on to go forward in April of 2012, 6-1. In fact, at that point in time, there was a request to completely move the property tax cost of stormwater onto the fee rather than a portion of it. That was actually an amendment that was made April 10th, 2012. We were going to do this, let's really do it. So yes, we've made some changes to this over time, but I question the new information. We've known what the impact was on not-for-profits and churches since 2011, 2012, 2013. There's no new information here. What hasn't changed also is it's not as though we have fewer projects to do. It's not as though we have that the cost of those projects has somehow gone down. So there isn't any new information, in my opinion. It's the same information that's always been there. The only thing that's different is the time of year, in my opinion. So I question some of the policy motives behind some of this change now. But so be it. The reason why we did it in the first place was a true stormwater utility should, like with water, be based on the amount of usage. You pay more for the amount of water that you drink. The less water you drink, the less water you consume, the less you pay. It's that simple. Stormwater is the same concept in reverse. The more runoff that your property creates, the more that you're supposed to contribute to paying for the cost of dealing with it. No question about it. That was the concept, and that's why it applies to everybody who contributes stormwater to the system. Just like everybody who consumes water has to kick in something to pay not only for the cost of water, but also the cost for the maintenance and infrastructure necessary to transport that water. That was the concept, and it hasn't been any different in the last 3 years. But as I said last time we discussed this, it's very clear that there is a majority of the council that now wants to make an exemption of not just houses of worship. And by the way, congratulations on your persistence. I'm sure the folks that would like to build their fence are learning a lesson from this. If they're persistent enough, they might just get what they want. Congratulations on your persistence. It has, I think it was described earlier, it's been very professional, it's been very polite. I don't think anything has changed other than the time of year, but clearly, obviously we've had some very respectful conversations, debate. All of us in one shape or another have met with you over the last 3 years in some context or another, and the issues are very understood, and we certainly understand the impact upon the organizations. And that to me is where I have a real problem. Fine, if we're going to have an exemption, then we should tailor the exemption to formulate the narrowest solution to solve the problem. If the problem is the impact of the stormwater utility upon houses of worship, it's been said once, it's been 1,000 times, we're talking about 22 parcels. 22 parcels. And when you add up the impact of this year of the cost of those 22 parcels, it comes to about $37,000. So be it. If the will of the council is to exempt those 22 parcels, and we all know who they are, it isn't as though there's some question as to who are these churches. I think some speaker said earlier, we were talking about the established churches in the community. We know who you are. It's not a question that we don't know how to define who they are. They've been around for a long time. We know who these 22 parcels are. I think, as I said before, fine, I can support exempting those 22 parcels because it's a $37,000 in today's dollar difference, and I don't think it's going to have a long-term impact upon the overall program of delivering the promise on better stormwater management in our community. It will have a small shift of that cost back over to residential property owners, but that amount, probably not a whole lot. So I can support that. What I can't support is then taking the next leap to all tax-exempt parcels. Because what I've heard, like all my colleagues and councils before us, that there is a value that's been described over and over and over again that's provided, and that there should be some better recognition for that. And the voices that we've heard from come from those same 22 parcels, the houses of worship, the churches in our community. And we've heard from you very respectfully and had great civic conversation with you for years now. We haven't heard anything from the other tax-exempt parcels, so I really question why we need to solve this with a sledgehammer when we can do it with a scalpel. Because exempting all parcels for this year, I think, would come to something more like over $200,000. And as Commissioner Jose and staff have indicated, over the long term starts to have an impact on our program. What the impact on that is, Commissioner Barnett's right, we can't look into a crystal ball and tell you, but it will have an impact. And that then gets into a broader conversation of, are we going to shift that responsibility of all not-for-profits, all tax-exempt parcels, back over to the taxpayers? That then becomes a little bit more significant. Now we're talking about something material. Before we had the stormwater utility, one of the reasons why we did the stormwater utility is that residential properties previously contributed 76% of all revenues towards stormwater management, and yet, if I remember correctly, only contributed about 50% or less of the runoff. So there was a disparity there. It doesn't seem fair. Why should my property generate only so much revenue, but I'm paying more to manage stormwater? Why shouldn't it be more equitably distributed? So that was one of the reasons behind it. If we back out the churches, that the ratio doesn't change too much. If we back out all not-for-profits, that $218,000 just in this year, and that number goes on every year. Now you're increasing the burden on residential property owners by 5%. Now, you may not think that's a big deal, but this will come to another point I've made before and I will make again. I think then it requires and mandates, in my opinion, a broader conversation. Because if we're talking about the 22 parcels, we're basically talking with those people right now here in the room. And even in this room, you've heard disagreement as to whether that exemption should be had. But once we start exempting all not-for-profits who have not been in this room, who have not been talking to us for the last several years, maybe we ought to have a broader conversation with the community, which is why a few weeks ago I suggested that maybe we have a referendum question, hear what the community thinks. We've been hearing for 3 years at least about this narrow issue, the 22 parcels. We haven't been hearing on a broader basis. So I question the decision to move it beyond churches and houses of worship and extend it to include entities such as the Illinois Tollway Authority, or the United States Post Office, or Midwestern University. No one has had any conversations about that with the community, and I'm very reluctant to go that broadly. And with all due respect, Commissioner, I know you didn't get any support for the reduction of the fee on churches, but to then go from there to excluding all not-for-profits is a material leap. And I'm not questioning your motives, it's a big difference. So personally, I could support exempting and would support and will support exempting the 22 parcels who are known to us to be houses of worship, churches in our community. What I would ask my colleagues to do, and I've asked before, is that that's the solution that we put forth. It isn't rocket science to figure out who you are, how to define you, and so we don't have people hanging up strange symbols in the driveway and suddenly calling themselves churches. That's not going to happen. Let's be serious about it. I think we can figure out who you are. We know who you are. We can tailor this solution as narrowly as necessary to address the issue that I've heard the majority of the council say they're now willing to address. What I haven't heard is any logical reason to go beyond that and exempt everybody. That to me just seems to be overbroad, unnecessary, and has a much greater risk of not only increasing the likelihood of some impact, material impact, on our ability to perform our stormwater promise to this community over time in terms of infrastructure maintenance, but also it's a material shift 5%. I mean, people don't get 5% raises, so 5% is a material number in my mind. A 5% shift of that burden back onto the residential taxpayers, people sitting in this room. It was like, well, wait a minute, now I'm paying more, and I haven't had an opportunity to really discuss this bigger shift with the council, like the 22 parcels have had on a consistent basis over the last several years. So what I would like to do is, and I'll say it again, is propose to my council members, my colleagues, that we solve this issue in the most narrowly tailored fashion that it needs to be, which is, I've heard the word churches, houses of worship come out of everyone's mouth. Exempt the 22 parcels. I'll support that. I think we might even get near unanimous support for that. The problem I have is broadening it out much further to where I think it poses a potential danger to our overall delivery of our stormwater program, which I've heard everyone say is very important. And also, in my opinion, although I know I'm in the minority on this, in my opinion, mandates a broader conversation with the community about that shift, the potential impact of all the not-for-profit revenues coming out of the mix, and the shift of an additional 5% impact upon single-family residential properties carrying a burden that they previously weren't carrying. I'm not so sure that that's fully appreciated by the community at large. I think that the houses of worship and the 22 parcels, I think over the last 3 years, people have kind of figured out what that issue is. I think they understand it. I'm not so sure that's the case more broadly than that. So my view is I would support and would ask, because we're not voting on this tonight, a more tailored solution, which I will support. I will vote in favor of an exclusion of the 22 parcels, which are known houses of worship and churches in this community. What I have a problem with and can't muster logical support for is the broader exclusion of all not-for-profits, which, again, nobody wants to pay attention to the tollway authority or the post office. I think that is too much. It's unnecessary. I haven't heard any compelling arguments to do it. They certainly haven't been in here making the case like the churches have. And I also think that if we were going to do that, it mandates a broader conversation with our community, which we haven't had. Now, that's kind of where I'm at, and I'll just make the request once again, is that we tailor the solution to fit the problem and not go too much, because it's unnecessary. We all know what the problem is. Let's address that problem and not go farther than we need. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor. Becky, if you want to go ahead. I didn't mean to jump in front.
Ladies first.
Well, not to debate it, but I guess I would fear that, if we tailored it like you said, then, Sharing Connections and Little Friends would come and say, well, we do great things in the community too, and we're just going to continue to end up slivering until it's all the nonprofits except for maybe the tollway authority and the post office. So right now it's a category that's defined by someone other than our staff, and I think about the school district. We provide them some exemptions or some deduction for their educational component, but in reality, they're just charging the property taxpayers more to cover that fee.
Well, it's no different than a corporation. The problem I have is that we don't have a problem defining that. We do it all the time. We're doing it right now. And we can find a definition for what a church or a house of worship is. I think the word established was used earlier. There are definitions that exist in law and in practice that can tell us who they are. I don't think we have to sit here and guess who those organizations are. It then becomes an issue, though, as you point out, as to who's in and who's out. And there are plenty of corporations who could say that they contribute mightily to the goodwill in this community through corporate donations or providing volunteers who may even be at the same pad shelters. We don't know that. Could they make the same case that they should be exempt? So that argument can be carried out ad infinitum. Anyone who could come in here and say that they, and I'm not trying to make comparisons here, but just to take that to an illogical extreme, yeah, we're picking winners and losers, let's face it. So as long as we're doing that, yes, we can choose who's in and who's out. So to say that somebody else could make that request, you betcha. But it's up to us to decide where it is. So we can either decide that it's way at one end or it's way at another end. And all I'm saying is the problem or the issue, the challenge is well known, narrowly defined. Let's tailor the solution to meet that challenge, that problem, and not go any further. That's all I'm saying. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. My concern from the very beginning on this has been making sure that we keep our commitment to solving our stormwater problems. I don't want to see us take a step back from that. And given the difference in the revenue and I think the much smaller impact you'd have with a more tailored solution like that, I might be willing to consider something like that as opposed to going all the way with all the tax exempt parcels. So I thank you for raising that. I know others have, and it's helpful to get a little more time to think about it, but if we're going to go down this road, let's tailor the solution to the problem at hand and have less of an impact on the solutions that we know we need to fund for our stormwater problems.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett?
Mayor, with all due respect, your argument it's well put, but you've set up your own problem definition so you can fulfill it. This is my motion. It's been my subject for a while, and as such, I suspect if you were to reflect with a little bit of attention to detail on the past, you would find very few, precious few, perhaps no instances where I referred to only houses of worship. They happen to be the most vocal entity in this body, to be sure. But your argument, as eloquent as it may be, is an argument based on a problem which you've defined that isn't the one I defined. The motion and the reason for the change is not based on the argument you're fighting. And so I don't really want to spend 4 more hours because we've spent many hours, as we all know, at this. But the question is, do we want to make a fundamental change in the way we pay for the delivery of services to the members of our community from the way we have done it, and other communities have done it, and the nation has done it historically? We do not charge for for a list of things. You can talk about Comcast and NICOR and ComEd and the water bill. And we could, I suppose we could argue each one of those individually, but by and large, this community and most communities do not in fact charge their not-for-profit community for the delivery of services. We don't charge for the maintaining of streets or the plowing of snow, which they all use. We could calculate that too if you'd like. There's a model in New Hampshire that goes at this whole funding of municipal services entirely differently than property taxes. But the argument that I've made and that I'm continuing to make, and the point behind this motion, is not only the churches in town that feel the burden put on them, but it's the discomfort I have in, if we're going to have a utility, which I haven't seen a lot of interest in not having one, but if we're going to have a utility, the change in relationship that puts into play as currently defined between the municipal government and the not-for-profit residents of that community. And so, we could solve it by picking one, picking the other. You made the comment about corporations that could make the same claims. Seems like pretty good reason not to start trying to pick those folks from up here, but rather let a third party, federal government in this case, who recognizes certain classes of actions and activities differently than others, be our guide. The same guide that this community used for its first 180 years, and the same guide that most communities and municipalities across the country use. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And it's different than, have we only heard from the churches, therefore what's the dollar value? I also, Greg, to your point is well taken. I wouldn't argue for a moment. I also haven't heard anybody up here say, we therefore are interested in somehow disregarding our commitment to solving the stormwater thing. What I've heard is, from this day as well as from our staff, that this isn't a 2015 impact, and the fact is that we move stuff around all the time and likely will continue to do the things necessary to continue to improve stormwater in the community, like we've done pre-stormwater utility. If we want to make sure that we leave no doubt, the total net dollars with or without the NFP community, or the, what do we call them, property tax, PTE community, remains substantially higher than it would have been under any other kind of equation. It also remains true that those shifts of dollars from residents to commercial properties remains a positive net gain for our residential community. Those things all remain true. So I'm not going to argue with you because your argument has a lot of good points. If we were only focused on that one issue. I'm not, and it was my bill, or my motion, so to speak. So.
Don't get
it's,
ahead of yourself.
I don't want to be anywhere near bills, but this terminology that I was in my head for the moment. So it's, I'm done. I will gladly yield. I'd like to continue to move forward.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Commissioner, although to really go back to the beginning, you were never in support of stormwater utility in the first place.
True.
So it was really not one that you were willing to support a change in how we pay for that service, period. So you're coming from a different perspective. Although I do remember back on April 10th, 2012, when you saw the direction that the council was going, the majority of the council, I believe it was only you and Commissioner Waldeck who were opposed to a stormwater utility going forward back in April of 2012. Nevertheless, weighed in with some suggestions on how to make what was going to happen better. I remember very pointedly, because I think I was sitting right here at the time, that at that point we were talking about phasing the stormwater utility dollars over a 10 or 15-year period. And the other question was whether or not we should only bring in part of the stormwater bonding dollars off the property tax levy and into the stormwater utility, which would have the effect of actually increasing the amount of impact upon everybody participating in the stormwater utility. But you made some good points, even though you were against the stormwater utility in the first place, against the shift from property taxes to a fee-based system, period. You nevertheless made a couple of good points, and there was a motion pending to go forward with the stormwater utility as proposed by staff. You made a motion to amend that motion to make those two changes, one which was to change the phase-in period for a different period of time, and number two, instead of a partial shift from property tax.
I remember it well.
Yep, well, not everybody does, because
Okay.
a few people up here weren't here then, and a lot of people in the audience weren't either. So all I'm trying to do is the same thing,
Sure.
basically, but in different ways. I see which way this is going, and I'm trying to make sure that the impact upon our overall system is at least potentially detrimental as possible. So I understand where you're coming from, but even somebody who was against the utility in the first place, not only supported that motion, but made that motion to make that correction, because you could see where it was going, and you wanted to at least change it so that we were going to have a utility, it would work better from your perspective. It's kind of what I'm trying to do here tonight, is I see where this is going, I get it, we're going to be exempting the churches, it's going to happen, but let's exempt the churches, and let's not go more than we have to, especially without a broader conversation with the rest of the community, who may not appreciate the potential consequences or impact long-term to what that larger shift might be.
Fair enough, just don't,
Difference is
avoid.
I can't call for a motion and you can.
Yeah, but avoid characterizing the discussion as only resulting as a function of churches feeling disappointed, because there's more than that behind it.
Again, no question about it in my mind, you were against it in the very first place, which by definition would have excluded property tax exempt organizations. So this is an attempt to modify what's already there. You've done it before, you're doing it again. I understand your reasons. Reasonable people can differ in this. I see where this is going. I'm simply trying to modify it in a way I think that will better serve our community.
Fair enough.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor. To one of Bob's points, I know for a fact that he has not suggested that we back off of our stormwater commitments and the steps that we need to take in order to solve our stormwater problems. So that comment was in no way directed at him, but I've heard others that sit up here make comments that they're not willing to increase the fee more than is already scheduled. And if we're going to go down that road, then there's a hole in the stormwater revenue. And the result of that is we have fewer dollars to do projects with, which means fewer projects get done, whether it's maintenance or capital. It's simple math. And if we're not going to have the commitment to putting the dollars into solving the stormwater problems, people will continue to flood. Residents, businesses, and that's what I'm hoping to avoid. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, and it's not a debate, it's a dialogue. Other questions or comments? Again, we're not voting on this tonight. This will be up for a vote next week. And I'll just, again, as the mayor, I can't make or second motions, but I will encourage one of my colleagues again to make a motion to amend the motion that's on the table, not unlike what we did back in April of 2012. We see which way this is going, and I'd like just to tailor the solution as narrowly as possible to address the issue on the table. All right, hearing nothing further. That was just item 9A. Now we're on to item 9B.
Item 9B is a motion estimating the 2014 aggregate tax levy. This is the property tax levy we've been discussing as part of the proposed FY15 budget. Here to present information on this item is our Deputy Village Manager, Mike Baker.
Good evening.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening. I have a very brief report. As much of this information is spelled out in the staff report provided. This is a statutorily required step in the process by which we estimate the 2014 aggregate tax levy. We do this every year. The action you'll take next week was one of the 8 items that was listed earlier when we had the budget public hearing. So this has been part of the information we've provided related to the budget a couple months ago. The overall levy is $24.3 million. However, that does not reflect the actual levy amount that will impact the community when tax bills come out next year. It will be reduced by $7.3 million, which represent the debt service payments, and you can see them listed in the table in the report provided. We're required to include those in the levy. However, because there are other sources of revenue available to pay those debt service payments, what are known as abatements, they ultimately will be removed from the overall levy. When you look at only the village's portion of the levy, that represents about $11.4 million, which is the figure that was included in the budget. And it's important to note as well that that figure is $180,000 less than the levy for the prior year, which again is something we've discussed during the budget process. I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Before we get to the members of the council, any questions or comments from members of the audience? Hearing none, questions or comments from members of the village council? Again, this is something we have discussed before. So thank you for representing it. Brings us to item 9C, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 9C is a resolution authorizing an incentive agreement with American Access Casualty Company. Here to present information on this item is the president of our EDC, Michael Casa.
Good evening, Mr. Casa.
Good evening, Mayor Tully and Village Commissioners. Michael Casa, President, CEO, Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, 5159 Mokel in downtown Downers Grove. I am pleased tonight to present the economic incentive agreement proposed with American Access Casualty Company. American Access Casualty Company will be relocating their corporate headquarters, including their 200 employees, to Downers Grove. The company's new home is the currently vacant building at 2211 Butterfield Road, which is, the building is located close to the Doubletree Suites Hotel, just off the main entrance of Esplanade at Locust Point. American Access's acquisition of the building includes plans for a total renovation of the interior. This represents a significant long-term investment by this company in our community. Since 1999, American Access Casualty has been a leader in providing automobile insurance products. The company does business in 5 states, including, of course, Illinois. Under terms of the economic incentive agreement, the Village of Downers Grove will provide a 50% reduction in building permit fees associated with the renovation of the building. American Access Casualty shall do the following under the terms of the agreement. 1, the company shall move their corporate headquarters to 2211 Butterfield Road in Downers Grove. 2, the company shall comply with all village ordinances and applicable laws. 3, the company shall diligently pursue obtaining all required permits for the renovation of the building. 4, the company shall begin its corporate operations in the building by September 1st, 2015. And 5, the company shall continue operations at 2211 Butterfield Road for a minimum of 5 years. If the company fails to do so, it agrees to pay the village the total amount of the fee waiver. The Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation strongly supports this agreement. The retention and attraction of corporate, division, and regional headquarters projects is a very important part of our work and a very important part of our local economy. The competition for corporate headquarters projects is intense. We not only compete with other communities in the suburbs, but we compete with the city of Chicago for these projects as well. Downers Grove has established itself as a premier location in the Chicago area for corporate headquarters. We not only intend to keep that reputation, but we want to continue to enhance it. Chuck LaMantia, the Chief Operating Officer of American Access Casualty Company, is with us tonight. I would like to thank him and his company for selecting Downers Grove as the location for their new corporate headquarters. Chuck, we know you had several choices, and we're glad you made the best choice. And now, Mr. LaMantia and I would be pleased to answer the questions you may have. And this is
Good evening, Mr. LaMantia. Thank you for being here tonight. Well, as long as you're standing up at the podium, I'm going to change things up a little bit and ask the council if they have any questions or comments at this point in time, and then ask the audience if they have any questions. So please indulge your patience. Questions or comments from members of the village council with respect to this item? I just want to echo some words that Mr. Casa expressed, which is we do appreciate the fact that you had many different choices, and choosing Downers Grove to locate your headquarters is not only greatly appreciated, but we're looking forward to a long partnership with you. For those in the audience, as Mr. Casa was way too humble in saying, one of the missions that he's been charged with as part of the Economic Development Corporation is to attract high-quality businesses to Downers Grove with a particular focus wherever possible upon headquarters of major corporations, because major companies that have headquarters here like to have other major companies with headquarters here, and it helps to attract more and more companies here. That helps with our economic base, that helps us overall keep the tax rates lower by having a thriving economic base within our community. So we do work very hard, actually when I say we, Mr. Casa works very hard in conjunction with the village and village staff to attract fine companies such as yours, and we know that you had lots of choices, so we appreciate you choosing Downers Grove. Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? Hearing none, thank you very much. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And the final item on tonight's first reading agenda is consideration of an ordinance that would amend certain provisions of the liquor control ordinance. Here to provide information on this item is our village attorney, Enza Petrarca.
Thank
Good
you.
evening, Ms. Petrarca.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you. An ordinance has been prepared to amend the liquor control ordinance to create a Class BF license classification to allow for on-premise consumption and off-premise retail sales of craft brew at a brewing facility. The ordinance defines brewing facilities as establishments which will distribute, manufacture, store, and sell craft beer brewed on the facility. The on-premise consumption area of the facility would be limited to 3,000 square feet, but food service would not be a requirement of this license classification. Individuals under the age of 21 will be allowed at the facility when accompanied by an adult of 21 years of age or older, and they will be allowed to participate in the tours provided at the facility, but would not be allowed to participate in the classes and seminars provided by the facility. The ordinance also makes some proposed non-substantive housekeeping amendments, such as cleanup and consistency and revisions of that nature. But again, nothing substantive, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from the village council? Commissioner Neustadt.
I think this is going to be a great addition to our community. You know, we've had a brewery in town for a while in downtown Downers Grove, and it's had great success. It's actually changed hands a few times, but I know that many of our surrounding communities have a niche for local breweries, and we're glad that you guys are choosing Downers Grove for your brewery. I think that we just talked about economic development for moving a major corporation here. I think this is an economic development victory as well, and we welcome you to town. I think you'll have a lot of thirsty patrons and folks who want to learn about beer with the industrial park right there. Hopefully that'll add to your clientele as you grow and thrive in Downers Grove, so welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. Enza, could you explain a little more why this is necessary, why it couldn't just be an extension of B1 quantity availability?
One, because both they're distributing brewing on-site, and they would be selling for retail sale what they've brewed off premises, as well as allowing on-sale consumption. So we do not currently have a license that provides for that, and we certainly don't have a license that allows that without food service.
So the B license, the retail sale of beer and original packages has to happen on the site where it's produced. That's kind of the key differential.
Correct, because they would also be distributing and selling
Gotcha,
off-site.
okay. All right,
So it's
thanks.
a whole different type of.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Yeah, clearly, for those who might be wondering, this is a license. First of all we're doing is talking about creating a new category of liquor license that doesn't currently exist in Downers Grove. The company that would like to pursue that license has yet to do that and will presumably be doing that at a future liquor commission meeting, and that will be coming before us. So right now, all we're doing is establishing a license for them to pursue in the future. But jumping ahead a few steps, the concept is very similar to what folks will probably recognize as either Urban Legend in Westmont or Solomotha in Naperville, where it's basically a manufacturing facility for the product, but they also happen to have a tasting room on site. And there is no restaurant service that is associated with that. So it's unlike what used to be Founders Hill and now Emmett's here in town, where it's a restaurant brewery, more of a restaurant that just happens to have a brew pub on site. This is more of a brewery with no restaurant on site, and we don't currently have a classification that fits this. So in order for the business to come to town, we had to create one. Clearly, we are familiar with other licenses that exist around us. This is a very popular trend right now, as Commissioner Neustadt points out. I think it will be a destination for others to visit our community, which is obviously, yes, supports economic development. So we need to make this step first. And then the normal process will have to be followed by the applicant, and they'll have to prove up everything they would normally have to prove up in order to receive a liquor license. And the only other thing I want to mention is there was some discussion about access by people under 21, and clearly there's access is one thing, but participating in how to actually make alcoholic beverages is a little bit different. So we had a little bit different twist on that than maybe some other places, but that seemed to be appropriate. Now, of course, without that restaurant component, I know what some other locations will do to make up for that, and that would, of course, be the food truck solution that Commissioner Durkin would talk about. But that's the subject of another conversation at another point in time. One step at a time.
That is all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for preparing the ordinance. And again, that will be voted on next week. Any final questions or comments, Commissioner Neustadt?
Just when we mentioned a couple names of other breweries, I think it's important to mention Mad Ape Brewing Company is the folks that are applying for this license and will then apply for the license once approved next week. So those other towns are those other towns. And they're here.
Yeah, they actually have, I think, a new and improved name.
New and
Do you guys want to
improved name.
introduce yourselves?
Oh, well, come on up and let us know. New and improved name.
Let the advertising start now.
Yeah, we like to
Yeah,
advertise.
those 300,000 people that are watching, use your time wisely.
I thought it was in the millions.
Maybe it is millions by now, who knows?
My name's Dave Yob, and I live in Glen Ellen, but decided because of my brewer lives in Lyle that Downers Grove would be a wonderful meeting place for us to get together and start a craft brewery. So sorry to my mayor in Glen Ellen that I came here, but we're happy to call this our new home. But the name of our brewery is not going to be Mad Ape. We thought we'd go with something a little bit less aggressive. So we're calling it
I
Alter
already have a tattoo, Matt.
You can get that removed then. Just heard. Alter Brewing Company, A-L-T-E-R, which is to imply change and always moving things around. And that's one of the things we want to do with our brewery is always do something different. And that's part of what the craft beer movement's all about. So we're happy to call this our home and be part of the economic community.
Terrific. We look forward to it, and we won't hold it against you if you decide to change your name again before you open your doors.
No,
You
got a
some
lot
time.
invested in this one, so we're starting.
Gotcha. Thank you. Appreciate that. Very good.
That is our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, terrific. That brings us to item 10, the mayor's report. In the interest of time, I will have no report tonight. That moves us to item 11, manager's report. Mr. Fieldman?
We do have a quick report tonight from Deputy Manager Baker.
Well, again, Mr. Baker.
Hello. Based on discussion that occurred at the October 14th council meeting, where direction was provided to organize town hall meetings on the topic of village facilities, we have some information to present, and this will be going up on our website very shortly with the dates, times, and other information about the events that we have planned, There will be two meetings taking place in early December, one on the 4th in the evening, one on the 6th, which is a Saturday, in the morning. They will take place here at Village Hall and include opportunity for tours if people would like to take advantage of that. We'll have quite a bit more information that we'll be putting on the website related to these events and related to the project in general, so people can inform and educate themselves even before coming to the town hall meetings if they so choose. That updated information will be available on the website on November 14th, and we're putting it together right now. And really the primary purpose of these meetings is to provide opportunities to inform the public about the facilities plans that have been discussed by the Village Council extensively to this point. That's all I want to share.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific. Then back to item 12, Village Attorney's Report. Ms. Petrarca, twice in one night.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. Only 3 items to present tonight. The first is an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2015 budget in lieu of passage of an appropriation ordinance, an ordinance amending the liquor code provision, and an ordinance exempting certain property from stormwater utility fees. All 3 of these items will be on next week's agenda. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 13, Councilmember New Business, and we have one existing item under Councilmember New Business, and as is customary, typically the council member who originally asked for the item to be placed under New Business is afforded the opportunity to introduce it as he or she sees fit, or to involve staff as he or she sees fits. This was something that Commissioner Rankin had raised, so Commissioner Rankin, if you'd like to introduce this item, please do so.
Sure. Staff has prepared a report that they're going to review.
Great introduction. Great introduction.
The sign ordinance was adopted in May 2005 and included extensive changes to the sign ordinance, including reducing the amount of signage permitted, additional landscaping, and the prohibition of certain signs. And most importantly, it did establish a compliance deadline, which was extended to May of 2014. The enforcement of that deadline is a high priority action item and has been of this village for this year, 2014. We have great news to report that we have achieved 95% compliance rate. So 95% of the properties with signage in the village are already in compliance with the new sign ordinance. The enforcement activity for the remaining 5% will continue, and we think it will conclude on or around October of 2015 as we continue to work with those remaining properties in an effort to facilitate compliance with our code. The application of the sign ordinance that's been in place for almost a decade now has been very flexible. In fact, the village has amended the sign ordinance 6 times in a 9-year period, and 3 other amendments were considered but not approved. Relief from the village requirements and sign regulations has been provided on 38 different occasions in a variety of conditions. One of the issues that came up when the council was discussing this under new business a few weeks ago, what is staff hearing? What are the common concerns when we interact with our stakeholders in regards to the sign ordinance? And really 3 things come to mind. The first is a concern that our code does not allow for what's commonly referred to as grandfathering. Instead, we have a compliance deadline. And there were concerns about making people comply with that deadline. The second concern is just really what the whole point of the new ordinance was back in 2005 is the new ordinance allows less signage than was previously permitted, and we hear that a concern that the new ordinance actually reduces the amount of sign permitted on properties. The third common concern we hear is if we're going to change our signs to comply with the new ordinance, can we have an electronic copy change sign? Well, electronic copy change signs were discussed in detail back in 2004, 2005, and were specifically prohibited with the new ordinance. As I mentioned earlier, our enforcement efforts, our compliance efforts are likely to take us through October of 2015, and that will really bring us across the finish line. We expect to be at or near 100% compliance at that time. One of the questions that came up from the council a few weeks ago is when would be a good time to review, consider, or look at new changes to the ordinance? Staff thinks the best time is when we really come across that or near that 100%, about the time we get done with our compliance efforts. So Staff recommendation on when to relook at the ordinance would be in the fall of 2015. I do want to mention that this sign ordinance was the product of extensive public engagement, business engagement, council discussion, subcommittee discussions, and I learned, looking back to the minutes, there were, I think, 20 or so meetings and several months, almost a year of activity. And it is the product of a lot of hard work, give and take from the business community, residents, the council, the planning commission, all sorts of folks. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions or comments at this point? Commissioner Rankin, I'll let you go first.
Well, I thought that report was enlightening, really. I mean, we keep hearing from people that, you know, the village isn't making any exceptions and that, you know, we're a big bad village enforcing the sign ordinance, and that there haven't been any changes, and it's never been reviewed since it was created, and nobody's getting variances. I mean, those are the kind of things that we've heard, but that report shows that we have indeed made changes and granted variances, 62% approval rate. It shows that we've heard from business owners and we've extended the deadline, you know, 2 years. We've been seeking compliance, and it shows that the main complaints are electronic signs, which is something that was one of the things that they did in the ordinance to forbid, and that you know, the complaint is that the size of the sign. Well, that was the point of the sign ordinance, to reduce the signage. So the complaints are things that I don't think we would be considering changing anyway. So I appreciate the time it took to get this report together. I think that it's a good education to show that the village has made attempts to make changes. They've listened to the community, and I just appreciate the time it took to put it together. So thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Neestat.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, the other day I was driving down Ogden and heading to Granger. And it's something, I drive by it that way all the time, but something that struck me is the DuPage Inn had a really big old sign, and it was actually all rusty and kind of faded out. It's a great local establishment in town, it's been there forever. I think because of the sign ordinance compliance and the deadline, they went ahead and upgraded their whole building facade with some new paint, some new greenscape, some new landscape, new awnings, and of course a new sign. I think that's an example of how the sign ordinance really has benefited not only Ogden Avenue, but our other business corridors and our community as a whole. The report here from staff tonight shows us that the sign ordinance is working. It is a good sign ordinance. It has been amended many times. It has been discussed many times. It was almost a whole year of discussion before it was actually implemented. I think the recommendation to look at it maybe next year, we can bring that up again if we want to, but I think as it stands right now, I'm in support of the sign ordinance and how it has worked. And like anything, if there's an opportunity or an instance that we need to look at it right away or have something to change or look at or amend, we will do that. People can petition us and go through the process as they have been since 2005 with their sign compliance. So appreciate very much the extra time staff put into this and look forward to that compliance getting to 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from the council? Just in terms of direction, does anybody disagree with not doing a comprehensive assessment until October of 2015? Does anyone want to do one earlier than that? All right. October 2015, it sounds like, and it'll been around for over a decade by then, so probably a good time.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, then, do any members of the Village Council have any new items of business under new business that they would like to raise at this point in time?
New?
GNU. Hearing none, we can't adjourn tonight. We have to go into an executive session. May I have a motion to convene may I have a motion to convene into closed session?
Mayor, I move to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C5 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the village or whether a particular parcel should be acquired.
Second. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.